Good afternoon. My name is Becky Tuden, and I'm with the East Bay Regional Park District, and I'm here to talk to you about harmful algal blooms. And I'll be talking about two case studies. One is Lake Anza, and one is Lake TEMESCAL. So for a quick overview of the presentation, I will be talking about just a 101 primer on what is cyanobacteria. I'll give you a little bit of context on East Bay Regional Park District and where we come from. And then I'll go into the two case studies on how we attempted and in some cases were successful in remediating cyanobacteria. So what we know about cyanobacteria, as most of you I'm pretty sure already know, is that it is found worldwide. It's not a new thing. It's a unique organism that actually provided oxygen to our planet many years ago, and it has some traits that it can move up and down in the photic zone, that it actually can photosynthesize. Unfortunately, it also has some unique traits that can be harmful to people. It has liver, nerve, or kidney toxins, and if ingested or come into contact with the skin, it can cause harm not only to humans, but we're finding also that to wildlife, both animals, otters, as well as our domestic animals, cows and dogs. And we don't necessarily know what triggers a bloom or what triggers the toxins. We do know that they like areas with low oxygen and high nutrients, and that essentially is our remediation strategy in the hopes of getting treatment results. But at this point, there are no guarantees for treatment. The East Bay Regional Park District is located in the San Francisco Bay Area. It spans 2 counties, about 125,000 acres and 25 million visitors a year. We have a number of swim areas that we monitor, and we have lifeguards. We monitor both for E. coli bacteria as well as cyanobacteria. And in 2014, we had our first toxin bloom, and here we are, a picture of Lake Anza. And then we also had dog deaths in 2015. So we've implemented a pretty extensive monitoring and notification program, which is the subject of another talk today. But in 2017, we really started to see blooms all over the park district. And these are just areas where we have swim areas. In addition, there's 1 or 2 cattle ponds. And we were seeing HABS, harmful algal blooms, everywhere. Just to give you some context, these are our main swim areas, and you can see this is a number of days of closure due to harmful algal blooms. And Lake TEMESCAL in particular had over 100 days or 3 months. Many of these, since this is annual, not just the swim season, it probably isn't as bad. But the closures we had in Lake TEMESCAL were crippling to the summer program, both the junior lifeguard and day camps. So we started on a mission to try to figure out what we could do to keep the beach open and safe. Lake TEMESCAL is a 10-acre lake, and right now it has a maximum depth of 15 feet, which is much more shallow than what it originally had when it was built in the 1850s as a drinking water reservoir, which was closer to 80 feet. And all of that sediment is now sitting in the bottom of the lake, and it's releasing nutrients. And this is shown by, this is a table showing orthophosphate. The triangles are the phosphate levels coming from outside the watershed, those inflows. And the circles are what phosphorus readings we're getting inside the lake. And what you'll see here is the, these lines, horizontal lines, are the EPA recommended phosphate for normal and eutrophic lakes. Eutrophic means high nutrients. And as you can see, what we're seeing in our lakes is very high orthophosphate, you know, so something like 6 times higher than what we should have. So targeting the internal loading, the internal sediments and the phosphorus they were producing, we started some remediation efforts. First, we just looked at controlling the vegetation, both mats of floating algae and a lot of pondweed. And then we did an alum treatment, which is something, it's a a substance used in drinking water that is actually chemically binds with the phosphorus in the lake. I'll talk about that in a minute, about how it worked. We also looked at how much it would cost to dredge the lake. There's 65 feet of legacy sediments releasing phosphorus. Dredging and removing that internal loading is considered the holy grail of treatment for harmful algal blooms. And what we determined was that it would cost about $28 million, which is a lot of money and takes a while to pull that together. But that is eventually our long-term strategy. But before we can get there, we still want to keep the beach open and safe. So we started a pilot called a NANOBUBBLER, and we are continuing monitoring that. So this graph shows you the phosphorus levels at different depths in Lake TEMESCAL, and as you can see, they're quite high. Here, these blue arrows are alum treatments. And as you can see, after the second alum treatment, which was actually a full dose of alum in 2018, we had close to 2 years, not only of low phosphorus, but we had no closures due to harmful algal blooms, which was a huge success. But as you can see, in 2019, the phosphorus started creeping back up again, and we started to see some blooms in the summer of 2019. And we knew that we needed to do more than in order to keep the lake open. So we did a NANOBUBBLER pilot. We were approached by Moliere, which is a proprietary firm, and we installed these trailers. They pull the water in, and then they use mechanical means to compress and create these nanobubbles that do not rise straight up, but really more disperse in a Brownian motion. And what we've seen is that we've seen a real increase in the oxygen. So right here is when we installed that NANOBUBBLER in August of 2020. You can see that at the bottom of the lake, it was 0% milligrams per liter of dissolved oxygen. And it slowly continued to rise until essentially we've had roughly a steady 5 to 6 milligrams per liter of oxygen, which is much better than historic levels. And the same with the oxidation reduction potential, which is another indicator of whether the chemical reactions are moving in your favor. So we really felt that this NANOBUBBLER was a success, and it's a relatively low investment, about $50,000 to purchase the equipment and install it. So we're pretty happy with where we're going in Lake TEMESCAL. Hopefully we turned a corner, and right now, as we speak, there is not an algal bloom at Lake TEMESCAL. So now I'll turn to Lake Anza, which is another lake in the park district. It's quite different in that it is highly stratified. It has a depth of something like 15 meters, 45 feet. It is also eutrophic, and it does have a native trout population, which means we have to be careful not to inadvertently mix the colder, lower hypolimneon, where the trout need that colder temperatures, and bring that up to the surface. So that changed what method we looked at. And in this case, there's also high internal loading of phosphorus. And as you can see, what happens is when you have an anoxic condition at the bottom of the lake, when it's stratified, then that sediment releases all this phosphorus. It's a chemical reaction that happens when you don't have oxygen in a highly nutrient-rich environment. You get more phosphorus. And so you can see these peaks as the lake destratifies. And this red arrow here is the remediation strategy that we employed in August of 2020. And that is called a hypolimnetic oxygen system, also called an HOS. And what it does is it delivers, in this case, liquid oxygen via gravity to very close to the bottom. And that essentially oxygenates those bottom few feet of the hypolimneon so that it can reduce the all-you-can-eat buffet for the cyanobacteria. And this is the distribution line that goes out to the middle of the lake. And then this red line here is where it actually is closest to the bottom and releasing it. So that was installed in August of 2020. And here you see, this is a chart showing dissolved oxygen. And this is the arrow, which is when it was installed. And you can see these are all different levels of the lake. This dark green is the deepest level of the lake. And you can see after about a month, the deeper waters where you tend historically to have less oxygen, actually the dissolved oxygen went up and stayed up pretty consistently. Unfortunately, what happened when we installed it, and there's a number of reasons why this happened, which we can talk about later, but the lake, which had been stratified, suddenly destratified. So all of that oxygen poor, nutrient rich water came to the surface, and that fed a huge algal bloom, which is currently there to date. Currently, Lake Anza is has a danger level of toxins, which is based on the regulatory guidance from the California State Water Board. So even though these charts are showing you that after the install date that we are seeing a drop in orthophosphate at both the hypolimneon, we're still having a serious bloom. And as you can see here, there's huge mats of algae, and we're still taking weekly monitoring of the temperature, the oxygen, and the nutrients, and we'll continue to monitor that. It may be that we need a whole nother year of using the HOS before we see the results that we want. And we will be considering whether we want to try some other methods to jumpstart that. But right now, these mats are actually, unfortunately, they support more nutrients by shading out photosynthesis and the oxygen that is produced with that. So we are in a holding pattern with Lake Anza, and people are chomping at the bit. As you know, last year our swimming facilities were not open or available to the public due to COVID-19. And it will be a great disappointment if we can't open up Lake Anza. So our fingers are crossed. That concludes my discussion of the case studies. We couldn't have done it without wonderful Park District staff that I work with, the advice and consultants of technicians, limnologists, professors, and our regional water quality control board. And I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.